Think about the version of yourself you show at work. Now think about the version you show your parents. Now think about who you are around someone you're trying to impress. They're not the same person. And somewhere, deep down, you already know that. But here's what Carl Jung figured out over a century ago, and what most people are still too afraid to face. That mask you've been wearing, the agreeable one, the strong one, the reliable one, the unbothered one. It wasn't just a performance. It became you. And the real you, the one with the anger, the needs, the contradictions, the desires you've never let anyone see, has been suffocating underneath it. This video is about that mask. Jung called it the persona, and understanding it might be the most uncomfortable thing you do today. But it might also be the most important. Before we go deeper, if this already hit something in you, take a second and subscribe. This channel exists for the people who take their inner life seriously. You weren't born with a mask. Watch a 2-year-old. They cry when they're sad, loudly, without apology. They refuse food they don't want. They hit when they're frustrated. They laugh without calculating whether the laugh makes them look foolish. They have no persona yet. What you see is what is there. But then something begins to happen. The child starts to learn, not through lessons but through experience, which parts of themselves are acceptable. Maybe you were loud and joyful, and someone told you to calm down. So you learned too much of yourself is too much for other people. Maybe you needed something and asking for it brought shame. So you learned need is weakness, perform self-sufficiency. Every single one of these moments was a lesson in survival. The child wasn't being dramatic, the child was being adaptive. In a world where love felt conditional, the mask was the rational solution. If I show them this version of me, the agreeable one, the strong one, the capable one, they will stay. And it worked. The people stayed, the love came, the approval arrived. So the mask got stronger, more refined, more practiced, until one day, sometime in your teens, your 20s, maybe even later, you stopped noticing you were wearing it. Jung wrote that the persona is a compromise between the individual and society. It is not entirely fake. It contains real parts of you, your genuine warmth, your real intelligence, your actual competence. But it is curated. It is strategic. It answers the question not of who am I, but who do I need to be right now to be accepted? And the tragedy is not that the mask exists. The tragedy is what happens when you forget it's a mask at all. Jung had a term for what happens when a person becomes completely identified with their persona. He called it inflation. Not pride, inflation. The word choice matters. Inflation means something is overvalued. It means a surface has expanded far beyond what the substance underneath can support. When someone inflates their persona, they have essentially become the mask. They have merged their identity so completely with the performance that they no longer know where the character ends and the real person begins. You've seen this person. Maybe you are this person. It's the man who has built his entire identity around being strong, who cannot admit he's falling apart, because admitting that would mean the self he's built his entire life around is not real. It's the woman who has performed kindness and agreeableness for so long that she cannot feel her own anger anymore, even when her boundaries are being crushed in front of her. It's the person who has performed competence and calm and leadership, who goes home at night and feels absolutely hollow because none of the praise they received today was given to them. It was given to the mask. And this is where something profound and devastating happens. You begin to be loved, but you cannot receive the love. Because the love is not landing on you, it's landing on the performance. And somewhere inside, at a level you may not be able to articulate, you know that if they ever saw the real thing, the messy, needy, contradictory, dark, magnificent real thing, they would leave. So the mask tightens, and the real self shrinks. Jung described this as one of the central tragedies of modern psychological life. The more sophisticated the persona, the more polished, the more socially successful, the more admired, the more violently disconnected you become from your own interior world. You get the applause, you get the relationship, you get the career, and you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel a quiet, creeping dread that one day it will all come apart. That one day someone will look closely enough to see through it, and you will be exposed. Not as a fraud exactly, but as something more unsettling, as someone you yourself don't fully know. Now here is where Jung's thinking becomes truly radical. He believed that everything you suppress, everything the mask locks away, does not disappear. It goes underground, it collects, it organizes itself in the darkness of your unconscious mind into something Jung called the shadow. The shadow is not evil. Let's be very clear about that. The shadow is not the monster under the bed. The shadow is simply everything you decided was unacceptable. Your anger, your envy, your grief, your hunger for something more, your desire to stop being so damn agreeable all the time, your need to be truly seen, not just approved of. The parts of you that you learned early were too much, too dark, too needy, too inconvenient, too human. Those parts didn't vanish, they just stopped being invited to the table. And the shadow grows in proportion to the persona. The more perfect the mask, the more monstrous the shadow beneath it. This is why the most controlled people sometimes explode in ways that horrify even themselves. This is why the most agreeable people can carry a bottomless well of silent rage. This is why the person who appears the most together is often the one who quietly falls apart the hardest when the structure around them cracks. The shadow will always find a way out. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You think it's bad luck that you keep ending up in relationships that hollow you out. You think it's just how things are that you feel like a stranger at your own dinner table. You think the exhaustion is physical. You think the emptiness is circumstantial. But Jung would say, no, the shadow is running the show, and the persona is the distraction keeping you from seeing it. How do you know if your persona has become a prison? Jung didn't give a checklist, but his writing points to patterns that appear again and again. The first sign, you feel profound exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much you've slept. This is not physical tiredness. This is the tiredness of performance, of holding a shape that is not your natural shape, every single day. You know the feeling. You come home and you collapse, not from what you did, but from who you had to be while you were doing it. The second sign, you feel most yourself in solitude, and slightly less real around other people, not just introverted, something deeper, the sense that the you other people know is a translation of the real you, and something always gets lost in translation. The third sign, compliments don't land. People tell you you're doing great, that you're so strong, so capable, so together. And instead of feeling good, you feel a quiet, terrible loneliness, because they're complimenting the performance, and you know it. The fourth sign, you are terrified of being ordinary. The mask often becomes tied to achievement, to being impressive, to being needed. So the thought of just being a normal, flawed, unremarkable human being feels like death. Because if you're not exceptional, what are you? Without the performance, who is left? The fifth sign, you feel guilty about your own needs. You apologize for taking up space. You minimize your pain. You say, I'm fine, so automatically that sometimes you genuinely cannot tell if you are or not. You have made yourself small for so long that being visible feels dangerous. The sixth sign, you are angry and you don't fully know why. Not explosive anger, quiet anger, the kind that lives just below the surface, that sharpens your voice sometimes without your permission. That makes you go cold when someone says the wrong thing. That anger is the shadow. It is the voice of everything you buried. It is the part of you that knows something real has been sacrificed, and it is done waiting patiently. By now you might be thinking, okay, I'll just take the mask off, I'll just be real. Jung would tell you it's not that simple. The mask is not just a choice you're making moment to moment. It is structurally woven into how you understand yourself. It is the container you've been pouring yourself into for years, maybe decades. When people begin to loosen the persona through therapy, through crisis, through a relationship that finally demands their realness, it can feel like the ground is being pulled out from under them. Who am I if I'm not the strong one? Who am I if I stop performing happiness? Who am I if I admit I'm lost? Who am I if I stop making myself palatable to everyone around me? These questions are not small. They can feel like annihilation. And Jung acknowledged this. He called the process of dismantling the false self and finding the real one individuation. And he never described it as pleasant. He described it as a confrontation, a long, often painful reckoning with everything you've avoided, with the shadow, with the grief of the years spent performing, with the real desires you silenced, with the anger you were told was unacceptable, with the needs you were ashamed to have. And here is the hardest part. Some people in your life love the mask. They need you to keep wearing it, because your mask fits perfectly into theirs. Your agreeableness feeds someone else's need for control. Your performed strength lets someone else avoid dealing with your actual humanity. Your endless availability meets someone else's fear of being alone. When you start to remove it, those relationships get disrupted. Some of them don't survive. This is not a small thing. This is why people choose the mask again and again, even when it's costing them their interior life. The mask has benefits. It keeps certain people close. It keeps conflict at a distance. It keeps the terror of being truly known and possibly rejected at arm's length. Jung didn't pretend otherwise. He simply believed, and his entire life's work pointed toward this one conviction, that the cost of the mask always exceeds the cost of removing it, that the safety the mask provides is an illusion, and the life lived behind it is only half a life. So what does Jung actually ask you to do? Not perfection, not instant transformation, not the destruction of every social role you've ever played. Jung was not naive about the world. He understood that the persona serves a function. you need a professional face. You need to be able to modulate how you show up in different contexts. The problem was never wearing a mask in certain situations. The problem is when the mask becomes the only face you know. What Jung called for was consciousness, the ability to look at your own persona and say, I see you. I know what you are. I know why you formed, and I choose consciously how much of you to wear today. That awareness alone is a revolution, because the mask only has total power when you don't know you're wearing it. Practically, what does this look like? It begins with noticing your discomfort, not running from it. The next time you feel that creeping emptiness after a conversation where everyone told you how great you were, sit with it. Ask it what it's trying to tell you. It begins with letting yourself be seen in small moments. Not a grand public confession, but one real conversation, one dropped sentence where you say what you actually feel instead of what sounds good. One moment where you don't perform certainty when you're uncertain. It begins with taking your anger seriously, not acting on it blindly, but acknowledging it as information. Your anger knows something about you. It knows what you value that's being violated. It knows what you need that you've been denying. And perhaps most importantly, it begins with grieving. Because underneath the mask, for most people, there is grief. Grief for the parts of themselves they shut down in order to be loved. Grief for the years spent performing a version of themselves that wasn't real. Grief for the relationships where they were never actually known. Jung believed this grief was not a sign of weakness. He believed it was the beginning of wholeness. The moment you grieve the unlived life behind the mask is the moment you begin living a real one. Jung once wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not because what's underneath the mask is terrible, but because you've been taught for so long that it is. The mask was never the enemy. It was a child's best solution to an impossible problem. It was love, shaped into armor. It was survival, wearing the face of performance. But you are not a child anymore, and somewhere inside you, beneath the competence, beneath the agreeableness, beneath the image you've been carefully maintaining, there is a person who has been waiting, not to be fixed, not to be improved, just to be seen, just to breathe. The mask will never let that happen. Beat only you can.